I'm getting emotional because a sub actually wrote a comment, and I hope she doesn't. Mind me mentioning her name. Her name is Amanda. I won't say her last name. She's a sub of mine, and she was very upset with me about my coverage of a certain creator. And let me just say this before I read part of the comment that she wrote. And I kept it in my withheld comments because I wanted to keep the comment section clean of friction and animosity. But I kept it, and I was very touched by the message that she sent me. And she said, "At Simcast, leave this alone, I beg you. You are too intelligent, delightful, and uplifting to lessen your spirit and ambience by entertaining this fool. You are a championing voice and an inspiration for women." Far beyond any sub count on YouTube. Please don't sully your battle flag with this bleep vomited from this diabolical misogynist. Keep waving it all in its glory and the colours of a champion's well-lived life. I thought it was beautifully written, and I have a few female subs that tell me, "Don't do this, Simone," or "I advise you not to speak to this person," or "Stay away from this person," or I have a few female subs that are very protective of me and also really admire me and care about me, and I really appreciate them. But what I want to say is that, and I've disappointed some of them by interacting with a certain person, and I feel bad about that. But what you have to understand as well is that I'm not perfect myself. I have my flaws and my imperfections, and I'm not a saint. I'm not a saint. I never will be, never have been. I've always been a rebel. So I really, really appreciate that comment that lady wrote, and I really appreciate her advice, and I appreciate her looking out for me. But I can't live up to being a feminist and being a voice for women, and I've never called myself an advocate or anything like that. However, I don't like to see particularly female victims like Shanann being degraded. I just don't like to see it, and that's why I speak up for Shanann. Now, in a previous podcast, I spoke to you about this person called Soup. I don't know if it's a woman or a man, but I think it's a female. And she basically blames the victim, Shanann Watts, for her demise. And she's writing on this platform, and I can barely get past, even though I've had to read the whole thing to get the full context of what she's saying. I can barely get past the first few lines, and there is a typo in it as well. I don't know if it's been re-edited, but as it stands, there is a typo in it. I find it absolutely atrocious that somebody could blame MLMs and multi-level marketing and Thrive for a crime such as this. Anyway, I'm going to read some of it, some of what Soup has written here. I am the writer of the Reddit postings titled Shanann's Slippery Slope. I am not a Shanann Watts hater. Let me be clear. I started I'm going to have to turn this fan on because it's absolutely roasting where I am. It's just so hot. I started writing about the Watts case as it became obvious that so much of the real story has been omitted. Slippery Slope was meant to be a look into Shanann's involvement with Thrive by Lavelle, an MLM. I believe, had she not immersed herself into the toxic Mlms lifestyle, the murder of her and her children would not have happened. While researching her promoter status with Thrive, I began to realize that nothing about this case is what it seemed. The Weld County's DA's office and the MSM had spun a fairy tale image of Chris Watts and Shanann's life together. That is not true. That's not true at all. I don't know what she's been looking at, but no one had ever said that Shanann and Chris Watts' life was a fairy tale. I would like to see the footage of somebody saying that Shanann and Chris Watts' life was a fairy tale. Because I haven't heard or seen anyone saying that. It was anything but a fairy tale. Over the course of the last few months, our preferred platform on this case via Reddit has been shuttered without explanation. I was a moderator of What's Off Topic and was still given zero information on why the subreddit was suddenly erased from the platform. I'm going to stop there, but everyone is allowed to have their opinion. And I think she can have her opinion, but she should keep her opinion to herself. Because even though in the Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias case, I don't have the sympathy for him that I would normally have, because I think he enticed Jodi Arias, and I think he used her. So I don't have the sympathy for him that I would normally have, but I would still never blame him for what happened, for what she did. So this soup person is literally blaming Shanann's involvement with Mlms for the crime, and therefore by proxy blaming Shanann. And it's amazing how many people don't hold the perpetrator responsible and accountable for his own actions. There are lots of toxic couples. There's lots of marriages where one person is overspending and it doesn't necessarily end in a crime like this. And then what is the excuse for the children? The children weren't involved in MLM. So what is the excuse for what he did to them? Very, very disturbing what this woman is putting out there, in my opinion. And I don't think it should be allowed. I will be revisiting the Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander case very soon. I remember this crime when it happened. The crime actually happened on my birthday, and I was basically a kid at the time. I had no idea what toxic relationships were, at least not in the in-depth sense that I know of them now. And I had no idea what narcissistic personality disorder was. And I remember watching Jodi Arias on a Dateline episode, and I really didn't know what to make of her. And it wasn't until the trial and afterwards that I made my, analysis and opinion of her. And she is by far the most narcissistic person that I've ever observed. And I'll tell you why in the episode that I will be doing on her. And I believe that, people say that Shanann and Chris Watts were in a toxic relationship and that Shanann was this and that and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to talk about that soon in this episode. But I think this is the real version of a toxic relationship. And as some people do not have empathy for Shanann, I don't have much empathy for Travis Alexander. And I'll tell you why. Now, when I say I don't have empathy for him, he did not deserve to be murdered. He did not deserve to go out in the way that he did. And I'm trying to add as much context to this as I possibly can. But he knew what Jodi Arias was about. He knew what she was like. He knew how obsessive she was. And he continued to see her, despite all he knew, because he was getting a great deal of narcissistic supply from their relationship. You know, he was getting, you know, he was having his cake and eating it. He was a Mormon guy who was supposed to be celibate before he married. And she was giving him, you know, what he wanted in the bedroom. And that's why he kept on going back to her. And I don't have sympathy for men who use women in that way. I don't think that Travis Alexander is a sympathetic victim, just like some people don't think that Shanann was a sympathetic victim. I think that about Travis Alexander. Now, there is no justification for what happened to him. There's no justification. And I think that Jodi Arias should be in prison for the rest of her life, no possibility of parole. And she is the most narcissistic person that I've ever observed, like I said. And when I heard her parents speaking and her mother speaking, I saw where she got her narcissism from. This is somebody who never took responsibility, always acted like the victim, blamed somebody else for what she did, and never ever took responsibility, and also never took it seriously. You see her in interviews putting makeup on, laughing and giggling. When she was asked to come down to the police station, she told the police officer, "Can you just wait a minute while I get my makeup?" I mean, this is somebody who is narcissistic to the core, and she was with a narcissist. I think Travis Alexander was a narcissist as well. And you hear that in the phone calls between them. He was very self-absorbed, very into himself, and they fed off of each other's narcissism. And like I said, he didn't deserve to go out like he did. But to me, I don't have the sympathy for him that I would normally do, because he allowed her to continually appear in his life because he was getting great narcissistic supply out of their physical relationship. And it's definitely in the top 5 of my most fascinating true crime cases in terms of how I feel about it and how I'm connected to it. And the fact that the crime happened on my birthday probably also helps. But I find Jodi Arias to be a completely fascinating character. And when people say that Shanann and Chris Watts were in a toxic relationship, to me, this is the real toxic relationship. But I'll talk about that more when I do an episode on her.